Now, this review is already a tad on the negative, but I am pointing out things I like first to give the film some value in its final cut. And maybe that's the problem. The film is struggling to find an identity due to what feels like several story and script changes, conflicted ideas of where to go in tones and themes, and damage control for how much was trashed with the previous film. And even with the extended cut, while it makes the film better, it doesn't fix a whole lot of it. It's great to see and still baffles me how so many important scenes were cut, like the prologue, but there was always something off about this film's production that, while waiting for it, my hype for this one was spent on the last two, making this so-called final chapter not just rushed, but unsatisfying for me. And that's no doubt due to the film's troubled production, starting off with the return of Colin Trevorrow and conflicts with, of all things, the Star Wars sequel trilogy, being finished around the same time, and appeared to share the same notes on how to make a sequel in the current political climate. I had a talk with a person closely involved with the production, whom for their protection I'm keeping anonymous, who actually gave me some more insight that actually have the last two films' creative choices make a lot more sense.
It's a long story.
Well, we have all the time you need.
After the success of Jurassic World, Colin Trevorrow got tapped to do Star Wars Episode 9, as the hype for The Force Awakens was underway in late 2015. In doing so, he took his production team he had for Jurassic World and began development on his titled script, Star Wars Episode 9, Duel of the Fates. But because Universal and producers Steven Spielberg and Frank Marshall wanted Colin to pen an outline for a new Jurassic trilogy, Colin and his co-writer Derek Connolly wrote the script for Fallen Kingdom and the outline for Dominion so that after Episode 9, they could come back to it. In writing Fallen Kingdom, it was suggested that then-impressive director J.A. Bayona would be ideal to directing the film while Colin was gone. That is when problems began on the trilogy. For one thing, while Fallen Kingdom was a practical improvement over the fourth film with animatronics and the likes, the entire production team was reset given they didn't have the same quality of talents on Jurassic World. The second problem was J.A. Bayona himself, who was not only soft-spoken, but allowed by producers to add his own spin to the script. Hence the theory of Maisie and the Indoraptor having a much more interesting origin and eventually being censored. But it also turns out the amazing prologue that we see in Dominion was actually J.A. Bayona's idea, which he originally suggested to open Fallen Kingdom, with a much darker outcome showcasing the dinosaur extinction to mirror the destruction of Isla Nublar. Third, and something to shorten down, during the development of Episode 9, it's said that Colin got wind of the story of The Last Jedi and protested to producer Kathleen Kennedy, bugging her so much she fired him and the entire production team off Episode 9. Hence the entire script of Duel of the Fates being scrapped and replaced with the damage control mess we got with J.J. Abrams on The Rise of Skywalker. When are you gonna review that? One trilogy at a time, please. Afterwards, Colin went back to Universal to check on the production of Fallen Kingdom and saw the changes the producers made to the project, which really threw him off, especially given early developments on the first world, at the time still called Jurassic Park 4, that it was Colin's idea to envision it as a trilogy. Even the actors involved raised concerns about the mess the story was made in changes. But then, Frank Marshall, of all people, suddenly turned on Colin and ordered him off the production and the films entirely, throwing everyone on the production off guard. And with Chris Pratt's experience with the James Gunn controversy with Marvel, it wouldn't surprise me if he stepped in to de-escalate things. Eventually, Frank Marshall apologized to Colin and allowed him to come in for Fallen Kingdom during post-production to make the ordered changes to the film fit better. And we all know what happened afterwards in the film's oddly similar criticisms to The Last Jedi a few months prior. This probably explains the sheer amount of reshoots reported and seen in the film to a degree, and the massive continuity errors of Fallen Kingdom in the mapping of Nublar, like how the Mosasaurus tank is now near the ocean rather than in the center of the park. Remember what Mueller said in his take?
Wasn't the whole point of that enclosure not to be connected to the ocean? Have you retconned it so that something can now escape, movie? That's a not-so-clever girl.
Well, that was an intentional flub in remapping the park. In fact, it appears everything got flubbed up. So much so that there was a second act on Isla Nublar that actually got completely cut, which explains how fast the first half feels. The raid was supposed to be a few days rather than a few hours. And while Collins' in-between film The Book of Henry bombed alongside The Rise of Skywalker, the score was eventually settled at an even pace, with the surprise financial success of Fallen Kingdom no doubt thanks to Collins' work in post-production to fix what was ultimately a four-way battle mess of creative control between Colin Trevorrow, J.A. Bayona, the producers, and another person more than likely responsible for Fallen Kingdom's shortcomings in the story. That, of course, being former producer at Emblem Entertainment and the wife of producer Frank Marshall, Kathleen Kennedy.
It was a lie. Bastard! It was all a lie!
So yeah, in case you couldn't put it together, Frank Marshall, producer of Jurassic World, has been married to Kathleen Kennedy since 1987. Hence why they work with Spielberg and produce a lot of his work, along with George Lucas. Only for Kathleen to be anointed to Lucasfilm when George sold it, keeping it in the family, so to speak. So it wouldn't surprise me that despite no longer being involved at Emblem, that Kathleen had her hands to influence two of the biggest franchises of the 2010s, and cinema in general.
What a nasty woman.
Oh god, it all makes sense now. Could it get any worse? Apparently she's the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Universe. What? Not only do both Dominion and The Rise of Skywalker share the same vibe, tone, and production problems and damage control, but also the same reason for the villain's return. Somehow.
Somehow Palpatine returned.